Hey guys, Desolator Magic here, and Mark Rosewater is here to brighten up your Monday with an article called The Future of Magic. Now, it's the future, and it's written by him. So you know, since he's so out of touch with what makes the game good or bad, this is going to be a hell of an article. Let's jump into it. I actually just skimmed it a little bit to make sure it wasn't just literally his resignation from the company. It's not, unfortunately. So it starts out with, I have many responsibilities as head designer, which his title changes a lot. Did you notice that? But one of my most important ones is looking to the future. Magic is going to keep evolving, so I have to stay on top of where the game can evolve. How about to a lower power level? How about that, Mark? And how about stop doubling things? Which he literally said, doubling or tripling, if he has any say in the future of the game, he's going to print it as many times as possible. So that's his plan for the future. I guess he's going to expand on it with this one. So he says, I thought it might be fun today to talk about what areas show the most promise for the future. Note that I'm not going to give away anything we might be doing, but rather I want to talk in bigger terms about the most robust areas of future design. And from what I heard from the headings, just kind of skimming, yeah, it's pretty high level. This isn't their big annual or semi-annual, hey, here's the next 4 sets, here's what planes they're on, here's what we're doing, here's a deck, here's a product, here's the next draft set. You know, we are kind of overdue for that, by the way, though. So in no particular order, first we've got expansion of existing mechanics. And he says, yeah, we've printed a lot over the last 27 years, we can just reprint them, but he's more interested in looking for ways to take old mechanics and expand what they can do. I hope he's referring to what I've been mentioning for the last, year or two on my channel, which is semi-mechanics. You've got, somewhat more resistant to being destroyed or being targeted, so it's semi-hexproof or semi-trample where just a little bit of the damage overflows. A lot of the keywords and mechanics right now are pretty strong, so watering them down a little bit, it seems pretty wise, and whenever they do it, it works pretty well. So he says a great example is cycling. When it started in Urza's Saga, it was just a simple mechanic that you trade in a card in your hand for a new card for 2 mana, and now it's devolved into a stupid broken bullshit deck that's almost impossible to interact with because Mark's an idiot and doesn't like interaction. Once again, he has no idea how to design fun, fair cards. Just none whatsoever. Zenith Flare needs to be banned approximately yesterday, so yeah, get on that. So he says, as we brought back cycling over the years, we've looked for ways to expand upon what cycling can do, and you can see how badly they screwed that up. We allowed different cycling costs, we created cycling cards that had an additional ability when you cycled them, and now they've gone straight to just, I'm going to cycle my entire deck and blast you with 1 spell, you lose. Wow, what a creative, interesting, dynamic deck with a lot of decision making. You just sit there and 1-1-1-1-1-1-1 draw through the deck and then bomb. Wow. And if they stop it, they get pinged to death or flooded. So you got 3 different things you have to stop, all of which you can't stop. And clearing the graveyard barely stops that deck. So what he's saying is he's historically taken mechanics that are just fine and made them worse and just completely broken them. Made them just an absolute insult to their original way that they worked. And he has an obsession with doubling things and making things that can't be interacted with, aka energy. Remember that? He got a lot of backlash over that. So the real cure for this and the real, vision for the future should be firing Mark Rosewater, obviously. He thought Companion was just fine and a perfectly fair automatic 8th card and half of a combo in your deck ready set to go in a non-interactive zone. I mean, there's clearly nothing wrong with that. When it's been 27 years and you're that f***ing stupid, you need to quit or get fired. Either one, I don't care. I mean, look at the Storm Scale. It's a list of all the mechanics in the history of the game. Almost every single one from 7 and up, which means they are never reprinting it ever again in Standard, were his creation. He doesn't know how to do math or limit things or promote fun gameplay. He's just like, power, we want more power. People love power cards sell. And then he drives out everything else. And then because he doesn't want his stupid little pet cards to be, stopped, he cuts all interaction to make sure that there is no way to interact or stop them. And he's done this for the last 10 plus years. So time to go, Mark. So he goes on to say, we made cards about cycling, encouraging you to play a whole bunch of cycling cards together. Yeah, that is one of the most hated decks in Standard right now. Good job, dumbass. Pat yourself on the back for that. A different way to do this is to create an environment where the mechanic can function the same, but leads to a radically different gameplay. Once again, that worked horribly for cycling. A good example of this is Proliferate. When it first appeared in Scars of Mirrodin block, it was paired with -1/-1 counters and poison counters. Yeah, that was a worse one, I'll give him that. But it was also his creation in the first place, so, arguably he just fixed it. So, making it a destructive mechanic, but now they made it like a +1 counter thing, and then it accidentally affected loyalty, and they didn't care. And they let it be legal at the same time as War of the Spark. Whoops. So his little conclusion here is this means that whenever I'm designing a set, I'm always looking at old mechanics to see if I can use them and if there is room for expansion. I should note that when we make new mechanics now, we think about what they can do and save potential expansion ideas for the future. A good example was when we were very aware very early that we could use static abilities on planeswalkers, which, yeah, they should have probably done that earlier, but then they held it back for years to save it for someplace it would be splashy and impactful, which was War of the Spark. Take an experimental thing that might be good, might be bad, and then throw it on the maximum amount of cards possible. What could go wrong? See, even at the highest levels, they're making just dumb mistakes. So next up, the next section is rehabilitation of failed mechanics. So he's not kidding when they go shopping for mechanics at the 7 and up on the out of 10 storm scale list. And I guarantee you it is 100% about his ego. If something got an 8 or a 9 because it was so broken and so hated by the community and so not acceptable in gameplay, he wants to swing back around and take a second shot at it so that he can say, well, yeah, it was a little rough the first time, but we fixed it the second time. My mechanic that I created is great. He's basically the Donald Trump of Magic. He's all about his ego and his reputation and really doesn't give a crap about much else. Oh, and his preferences for the game, like doubling things and big, giant, splashy creatures, yeah, that's what goes now, because he wants to do. He doesn't care what you want, he wants what he wants. So he says, another place to look when examining old mechanics is to find things that showed potential but didn't work out. The classic example here is Chroma. I had to look that up. I thought that was the more colors, the better, but that was something else. It was a weak precursor to Devotion, so he's like, yeah, we made Devotion, it worked better, and yeah, it did. Oh boy, you got one right out of ruining the last, 8 sets. And actually, this time around, it was virtually unplayable. They gave it no support. I mean, if you look at blue, there's 2 cards that have to do with Devotion, and they're both garbage. Then he moves on to the next section, which is new frames. So in other words, they're copying Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And they're going to have 6 different versions of the art, and then it makes it impossible to buy a single, screws with all the prices, and then they just dump collector's boosters on top of it, and it just becomes one giant dumpster fire. I think I just summed up the entire section, actually, so I'm not even going to read it. Then we've got double-faced cards, because that's a thing that we need again. It screws with drafts. It makes them almost impossible to do at a competitive level. Works fine for digital, but I don't know if you guys ever heard what their solution was for DFCs or double-faced cards. They would open the packs ahead of time for everyone at a 2,000-person tournament, and then sleeve the cards, and then you would draft them and then unsleeve them. That was their solution and workaround to the fact that Wizards won't stop doing double-faced cards. And then when they did just Nicol Bolas, and that was it, if I'm not mistaken, for that one set, they did one DFC. Because they did it, they had to once again screw with draft and bring 10,000 sleeves and add hundreds of hours of volunteer and judge hours to sit there and put them into sleeves so that they can draft and then hope they don't leak the information or rig it, all because they wanted to have a double face card when the last I heard, people hate double face cards. They just generally hate everything about them. The need for proxies, then you got to pull it out of some side thing that didn't fit in your deck box, or you got to pull it out of the sleeve and it's a $25 card, so now you're damaging it. Everybody hates them. They're just a giant pain in the ass. So let's see what he says about these. This is another vein of design that's turned out to be rather deep. Double-faced cards like frames can be used in several ways. 1, Magic loves transformations. That is true, but, bring back Level Up. I don't know why the community generally didn't like Level Up. It's cool, you're investing mana in something that already entered play, you can dynamically change stuff, you get, late game value out of mid game to early game cards. It's the perfect mechanic. In my opinion, everybody didn't like it is just wrong, but maybe they implemented it so poorly that it was just bad in that one, experiment. Anyway, he says there are just a lot of cards and abilities that magically change something from one to another. We've always struggled with these types of cards in the art because it's unclear what we wanted to show. Literally nobody cares. You could just cut the art in half. Nobody would give a crap. If you show the before version, you don't get a sense of the after, but the opposite is also true. Like I said, cut it in half. Nobody would care. If you try to show the creature in transition, you often get an image that doesn't do a great job of clearly conveying before or after. That's true. Double-faced cards are a perfect answer to a purely art and representation problem, let me just add. So you're killing draft, killing the functionality of the game and pissing people off and making people re-sleeve stuff and use proxy cards and Sharpies and just make the game look just idiotic. All because, but we want to show 2 artworks. Which, by the way, you have to pay 2 different contractors for, or pay the same contractor twice. Either way, you're basically paying double for, 2 pieces of art instead of 1. I think that money would be better spent on making the paper not complete garbage. Or the ink, or the print quality, or the foils, or anything, or the cutting, or anything at all. So, number 2, when both sides on a transition have to live on the same side of the card, it limits how much text we can use to mechanically convey each side. That is true. If you want to drastically change what it is, it's hard to fit it. Use a double face card and suddenly you double the text space allowed. Yeah, and then you cause 60 other problems. This means that there are numerous double face cards that we couldn't do as single face cards. Then don't print them. Just leave them on the drawing board, reject them, and do literally anything else. Oh, except for the birthing pod bullshit where you're like, well, we want to turn this into a bigger creature, so we're going to say, go get one that's CMC 1 or 2 higher from your deck for free. I'm sure somebody won't do something very glass cannony with it. Oh, shit, they did. So, number 3, transitioning cards is a wonderful use for double-faced cards, but it is far from the only use. One of the most exciting things about double-faced cards to me is the potential that they have to do all sorts of other interesting things. Of every mechanic, and he uses that term loosely because, double-faced cards, is it really mechanic? I've helped bring to print, none has more design space than double-faced cards. There are all sorts of exciting things I believe we're going to be able to do with them. Hey, remember Jace when he hit like $80 because he was so broken and they refused to ban him? That was their first shot at it. It's just a way for Mark Rosewater to say, this isn't powerful enough, we need more powerful. Put a second face on it and then flip it. Now it's really powerful. And then Jace just breaks the game, completely and utterly obliterates everything, and just ruins standard for 3 to 6 months. Mark needs a new job. He really does. He needs to get the hell out of card design. At least the final thing he says about it is double-faced cards come with even more baggage than new frames, so it's not something we can do quite as often. Yeah, I'm sure it costs more at the printing facility too, so it's all kinds of not worth it from a functional standpoint to an expense standpoint. I am excited though with the opportunities going to provide us to wow you all in the future. The only wow we've been hearing when he prints some stupid gimmicky bullshit like a double-sided overpowered card where it goes from bad to worse is, wow, how do you still have a job? But wait, it gets worse. We've got punch-out technology, and he literally shows like the token, like keyword token things, and then the embalmed exerted brick -1, all that stuff. Once again, very expensive to do at the graphics facility. It's just more bullshit to track that makes you wish you were playing digital. It's just, no, they need to eliminate punch-out technology and make it unnecessary so you can just tell what the card does and leave like targeting up to the player. Like you could target anything, you could flicker anything, you could bounce anything, you could clone anything. All terrible examples, very overpowered lately, but if you leave something wide open, the power is the flexibility, there you go. Now you've got a dynamic, interesting card that acts differently every game. And it's all fueled by the player's choice, and the player's choice indicates their skill, and then when they win the game, they feel like they made the right decisions, and won based on skill, not based on their deck's design or what cards they drew. So luck or copying other people's work off the internet. They had said they're moving towards the player feeling like they won a game, and not just, random chance who they got matched up against or what card they drew. And then they completely stopped doing that and made a win on turn 4 deck. So, good job, guys. You almost had it. So I'm just going to pick out some of my highlights from this section because he goes on forever about these. One of the biggest restrictions on these punch-out things is the limitation of the audience to follow what's going on. But that didn't stop you from printing Mutate, where you can have a stack of 4 mutated creatures and then clone it and not remember what the hell it is. So it does skip to 4 ideas. Number 1, it can be enhancements to permanents on the battlefield, which is kind of nice, but you could just put counters on and do level up. Like I said, bring back level up. Then it can be used to help track advancement or the opposite, like declining in something. So like brick counters, exert, whatever. Then number 3, we can have punch-out components that are themselves permanents, which just printed as a token. Why would you possibly make it punch out? That's just stupid. You could fit like a line of 15 tokens on the field. I mean, or just use dice. They do say like anything that wouldn't work well on cards or as cards, but like just print tokens. And then number 4, finally, they could be used as outside components, things that affect the game without technically being on the battlefield. Which, I mean, I guess like a cool punch-out thing for like charge counters, but I mean, we all know, we saw the poison counter card. It's a little card you drop into play, and then you put dice on it to represent the poison counters. It's kind of like a zone, but it represents like you, the player, and your ability to hold counters as a zone. So like that's cool, but once again, why the hell does it have to be punch out? So I don't really agree with anything he said in that whole entire section. Next up he says cards that can't go in your deck. Oh, because Companion went over so well. And the whole flip card where you gotta really effectively own 8 of them and then run the proxies. Or I guess run the proxies, and then when the proxies flip, then you do it, but then you almost have to have 5 of it, 4 flipped, 1 not, to show them what it does, because the proxy card only shows it as 1. So yeah, cards that, quote, can't go in your deck have historically been annoying, stupid, overpowered, and awful. So I could see why he would focus on it for the future. It's like he's trying to completely and utterly obliterate this entire product and just drive everybody away from it. So he goes full-blown Yu-Gi-Oh! With the first one and says, forbidden, like these cards are splashy cards that require cards in the deck to access them, whether they go to the deck or onto the battlefield. No, we're all sick of like borrowing the sideboard zone to like store cards for Nissa to go fetch and all this other horse shit they've been doing lately. And yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! They have this thing called the extra deck. It's where you put your powerful shit that you summon onto the field and piss off your opponent. Really, honestly, not something you want to do, and then you need 2 colors of sleeves, otherwise you'll accidentally shuffle it into your deck. It's all just a pain in the ass, and it just screams overpowered. That or not worth doing, and people just abandon it because of its functional problems. Then he said, they don't have to be powerful, they can just be weirdly specifically narrow, like some stupid glass cannon combo. Yeah, that's what we need more of. They allow cards in the deck to access them that have a utility belt feel. It's called a tutor card with a 1-of, okay? I had Rise of the Dark Realms as a 1-of. It's a 9 cost, and I only want it when I have 9 mana available. I ran Cryptghast, it made sense. So I would run 4 Diabolic Tutors to go get that or Ingaruk's Wake, and that was it. And my chances of drawing those cards when they're a 1-of in any given game is like non-existent. But I had to sacrifice 6 cards of deck space to do that. That's the trade-off in Magic, not, I'm just going to have it outside my deck. That's inherently broken. So this fetch it from, some non-existent thing and it's not even in your deck and you can just go get it at all times and it's always accessible via some other card. It's just companion all over again. It's another automatic combo. Automatic combos where one piece of the combo is always available to you is never going to work. That is never going to be acceptable. It is always going to be inherently overpowered. So he's saying they want to do it again. I mean, once again, this is like a list of reasons Mark should be fired. So number 3, these cards could be cards that play an element in what another card does. It's literally what he just said in the first 2. Then number 4, these could be powerful reprints that need a hoop to jump through. That's pretty much also what he said in the first 3. He even said, this is literally the entire thing. These could be powerful reprints that need a hoop to jump through. This is similar to number 1, but the feel of it is different. Well, how? Are you going to give us an example, or... I've got an idea, just f*** the whole thing, just don't do any of it. How about that? So next up he says card components outside the deck, which is literally what he just said, but then he shows, emblems. Okay? So he says these are elements that aren't necessarily cards. No, they are cards. They're physically cards, but are things that can be brought into the game. So he's just saying emblems. We like them and we're going to keep doing emblems. Wow, in fact, he literally says the one we use with regularity are emblems for planeswalkers, which nobody ever bothers to actually put in their deck or have for some reason. That always bugged me. You gotta drop 20, 30 bucks on a planeswalker, you're not gonna drop 50 cents on a damn emblem so that we can tell if the emblem's in play or not. Like, half the time, the player forgets that it's in play and forgets to activate its, end of turn ability. Like, you want a little visual reminder for 25 to 50 cents. Seriously, why do people not do this? Oh, that's right, because it's fucking annoying. Nobody wants a 76th card. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants the opponent to risk seeing it and then know exactly what deck, strategy, card, and colors they're playing. Nobody wants to pause the game to go dig in their deck box to find a thing that's in a different colored sleeve so that you don't accidentally shuffle your freaking emblem back into your deck. It's just, nobody bothers because it's just that annoying. I don't think it's much effort, but it is very annoying. I will give them that. So he says a better example of, emblems or this idea would be the Monarch mechanic from Conspiracy, where, you track who the Monarch is. Clearly everybody used the Burger King crown instead of the card. It was way funnier. But he says they want to produce, I guess, another Monarch card or some kind of tracking thing. Just one more stupid bullshit thing to track. That's what we need. Another example of this is... of us pushing in this space would be us creating tokens that carry the weight of what they do. I hope he gives an example, because I once again have no idea what he means. Throne of Eldraine cards merely mention food tokens, and the food tokens say what they do. This can be extrapolated into much more complex external elements. So what, tokens that do more things? Okay, so they're just going to make tokens slightly cooler? It's not even about the token, it's about the card that generates the token, because you're just generating the ability to use an ability in the future. So the whole, I want tokens that do more things and are more complex. Well, so? The tokens are just an extension of the card. What you're saying is you want more powerful cards, which nobody wants. Nobody wants that, Mark. I may be mistaken, but I haven't seen one thing that anybody actually wants in the game that he said they're going to do in the game in the future. He's just naming one toxic, overreaching, broken thing after another, after another, after another. What a great view of the future. This totally doesn't make people want to quit the game. Now, if you didn't pick up on it before, the next section is literally titled Additional double quote decks. And he gives the example of contraptions. So we have gone 100% full-blown Yu-Gi-Oh! Extra deck. He does realize that deck boxes are meant to fit a certain amount of cards, right? And people don't like having to buy 2 different colors of sleeves and then only use 15 of them or whatever. So he says, yeah, contraptions from Unstable play in this area where a second deck is brought into the game. And then you got 2 things to shuffle, then it's too small to randomize correctly, too easy to manipulate, too easy to cheat. Just, I could think of 100 reasons to not have an extra deck. And he's like, no, we're doing it because it's cool and I want to copy Yu-Gi-Oh! Even though they're dying. So this is similar to the last category, but involves more pieces put together in a deck, which usually allows randomization of those pieces. Well, not always. I mean, an extra deck is a straight fetch thing, and then the other one is randomized. So yeah, it is 2 different ideas. And they did say they want to do both. So the upside of a second deck is that the item created can have a lot of personality. Nobody gives a shit, stop breaking tier 1. Like, personality comes about 7th on my priority list. So the downside is that it represents a lot of additional elements and adds a significant amount of complexity and logistics. Yeah, both digital and paper. And you need more room to play it, too. And you need more room in your deck box. And you need more sleeves. It's just, I've got an idea. Don't do it! For example, it just, oh yeah, he's going to say everything I just said. It takes up more gameplay space, blah, 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 whatever. And then he ends with basically, but we're still going to do it, so screw you. Next up, Minigames. Like Shahrazad and Goblin games or whatever. Really? Literally the most universally banned and hated thing in all of Magic. I am not exaggerating. People hate the card Shahrazad more than poison counters and Phyrexian mana. Ask anybody. Literally any player who has heard of both, ask any of them which one they think is more toxic, they'll say Minigames. I'm sure he's going to say anything between play an entire second game of Magic to coin flipping and everything in between. I guarantee that's what he's about to say. So let's see. These are things that make you stop what you're doing and play a small separate game, which just, does that even sound attractive to anybody, or does that just sound like something you don't want to do? You're there to play Magic. I've said it before and I'll say it again, they need to add Nickelodeon-style physical challenges like running an obstacle course. But other than that, which was, of course, a joke, not to mention very discriminatory and ableist, nobody wants to stop playing the damn game to go track some other bullshit and waste more space on the table and think about something else and then come back and try and remember what the hell they were doing. Nobody wants minigames. Leave the minigames for Mario Party. Okay, this is bullshit that he would even think anybody wants to do this. So he says, Unhinged had an entire cycle of minigames. Yeah, the whole high-fiving thing and all that other crap. It was fun to do once every 10 years as a gimmick, but not in Standard. He's literally talking about Standard right now, so yeah. So all the unsets of cards forcing you to play sub-games where you stop your normal game to play another game of Magic. Really? Did all the unsets do that? I didn't even think any of them did that. Maybe one. I don't know. I don't remember that from the latest one. Anyway, minigames usually want to be very quick and need to thematically connect to the larger game. I believe Black Border could one day get here. So like I said, they're planning this for Standard at least, or at least, well, maybe a Conspiracy 3 or something. I don't know. They want to get there provided we find the right kind of minigame. Or just give up and don't do that because nobody wants that. You know, one of the two. There is a subset in the minigames that function a little differently. Rather than stop the game to play a subgame, you play the subgame while you're playing the normal game. Well, yes, it goes without saying, having to clear the board or move to a different table or just try to remember the board state and reset it up later is beyond unacceptable. But he does say Hangman from Unstable is a good sample of this subgame. You're essentially playing a game of Hangman where the controller of the Hangman is trying to make a creature as large as possible before the other player can solve the Hangman game. This is happening as the game progresses. Yeah, as it should. That should always be the limit. And the size of the Hangman is always relevant in combat. So, okay. War of the Spark played around with a mechanic called Skirmish, where how you succeed in combat impacted how a separate minigame was playing out. Oh yeah, that's what we need is 37 more rules that screw with combat. What a great idea. This is a good example of how the external component and the minigame can intersect. I legitimately hope they never, ever try to make Skirmish work again because that sounds like the worst thing ever. I mean, they're being kind of vague, but that still on the surface sounds terrible. Then he's got a section for Companion called Affecting Deck Construction. It either competes with Tier 1 or it doesn't, and people either will build it or won't. It's that simple. Putting a constriction on it means that there's really, like if you look at Lurrus, there is one way to build a Lurrus deck. I mean, when you're limited to 1 and 2 cost and only 2 colors, Or actually, no, is it? No, it's not the commander. So actually, you could go 3-color with it. Just nobody does. I've seen it once. But anyway, basically, if you're mostly going to play 2 colors and it all has to cost 1 or 2, let's be honest, there's really one way to build the damn deck. So what you're really doing is making a pre-constructed like Planeswalker deck or like a dual deck, and then just saying people can either take it or leave it. You know, I want to build what I want to build and variations of what I want to build, and I want to tweak it for my local meta and all that. I don't want to just be, I'm building the Kahira deck, I'm building the Lutri deck, I'm building the Obosh deck. Nobody likes that, and it's what they try to move away from when they go to tribal. They try to make tribal stuff as wide as possible, because honestly, if you look at Merfolk, because as toxic as that was, unfortunately, around Ixalan, there were like 3 drastically different Merfolk decks. One was unblockable, pure blue, let's go, flyers, like flyers or unblockable either way, like evasive. And then a huge control back end. One was absolute speed blitz and like counter drop and just go. And then one was like kind of somewhere in the middle with a lot of the late game threats and abilities to tap your Merfolk for abilities and, play 5-cost stuff and, just a more generic deck. But then we've had times where it's like, I'm playing the Goblin deck. And there's clearly goblins that are better than others. There's one way to build it. There's an optimized way to build it. Nobody can argue with that. And it's just, that's the deck. They need to move away from that. It's boring, it's stupid, it's gimmicky. So to say, we're going to affect deck construction by putting this ridiculous constriction on it, everybody's just going to settle into this little tiny narrow thing. Because what you're really doing is eliminating 75% of the card pool and saying, here, work with the rest. Well, of course people are going to build similar decks that are boring and repetitive. What the hell do you expect? You got rid of 75% of the card pool. So they want to do it again. After the disaster that was Companion, they want to try doing it again. Great. So another area is creating cards that directly impact deck construction. The Companions from Ikoria are the best example. If that's the best example, drop this and never do it again, obviously. I mean, people were literally calling for you to get fired who normally wouldn't go that far. So these cards can work in one of 2 ways. Either they can only be allowed in a deck if certain criteria are met. That is, they create restrictions that impact how you build your deck. That's the end of the paragraph. The second category is something we messed around with in Time Spiral, where the inclusion of a card allows you to have access to deck construction elements you wouldn't normally. Is that how that worked? I remember like the purple rarity. I just never really played around with it. I obviously didn't play when Time Spiral was legal, but I'll take his word for it. In the case of Time Spiral, we had cards that let you make a small subset of standard legal Well, but then they printed them and they were still cards. He's stretching this a little bit, just saying. For example, one of them let you play artifacts that cost 6 if you included particular cards in your deck. That's a terrible example. Anyway, these types of cards can be very splashy. That's his code for overpowered garbage that everybody hates, and definitely play into a style of play that many players enjoy in other formats, but have big impacts in tournament play and can reduce variance in gameplay. Oh, he admitted it. Good for him. The trick is not doing it. The trick is not doing it at all, Mark. But he says the trick is finding ways to tap into what makes them popular without producing the downsides in tournament play. Yeah, you tried and you came up with Companions, so maybe you shouldn't, play with fire anymore. Mark Rosewater is so disconnected from reality and so bad at judging things, he shouldn't even be allowed around matches. In fact, they should require him to wear a helmet at all times. So then he says, top-down designs. His final category consists of designs where you take a theme and push it to an extreme, breaking some set rules for the game. I bet you think I made up that sentence, but I read it verbatim. This one is harder to quantify, but it is something I always look out for when we're figuring out a new theme. So, he purposely designs broken shit that's pushed way too far, is what he's saying. And it always works out, and the community always accepts it and totally doesn't have any backlash for him. So this isn't a category that we've printed any cards with yet. Bullshit! But as I look to the future, it's definitely an area that I think could produce truly amazing things. You've gone too far with free casting. You've gone too far with land drops. You've gone too far with mana generation. Pushing something to the extreme where it breaks the rules of the game. Heroic intervention. Veil of Summer. Giving green counterspells in the first place. Giving white counterspells in the first place. God's Willing. Feat of Resistance. A 12/12 Trampler that costs 2 mana, Gulta, that's pushing things to the extreme and breaking rules. Creatures that simply cannot be interacted with in almost any way. Planeswalkers that cannot possibly be hit because they summon 3/3 beasts that have reach. As a plus, mind you, not even as a negative. Oko, where you have unlimited removal. That's pushing things pretty far. Unlimited removal that you don't have to pay mana for, and it's on a plus on a Planeswalker. That's breaking some basic design rules of the game. Consistently printing infinite combos for the last 4 years. That breaks a basic tenet of the game. Letting a card like, I don't know, Hostage Taker infinitely combo with itself because you're too stupid to realize it. That broke a rule that we didn't even know existed, called don't let something infinitely combo with itself. Companions, don't let people start with 8 cards. I mean, that's a basic rule that you broke. Don't let Standard have a commander. That also basically was Companion, although if it dies once, you're screwed. The fact that he has the balls to say this isn't a category we've reprinted any cards with yet makes me think he might actually have Alzheimer's or something. Some kind of memory, like dementia issue or something. I mean, there's so many examples of breaking basic rules of the game and pushing power levels so high that it's something they never would have done for balance reasons. Like, we have almost one example per standard set. So it's amazing that he would say that they haven't done it yet. What that says to me is he thinks they haven't done it yet. Basically, he's got batshit crazy ideas that are even worse, and he just hasn't had an opportunity to do those yet. Great, I can't wait to see what he comes up with next. Or they could just fire him. And then the conclusion here is, it says Future Shock, which, yeah, I'm getting that from this article here. What I've talked about today are not the only areas for potential growth, just the ones we've spent the most time thinking about. I always like to think back to when I started working on Magic and ask myself what I would have thought of many of the advancements we've made. How about the mistakes? I'd focus more on the mistakes because those are detrimental. If you're like, this is a 10 out of 10 mechanic, and people are like, it's playable, I guess we'll kind of do it sometimes, and it hits maybe a 7 out of 10 from the community. Cool, that's better than, oh my god, I'm not going to play Standard until this bullshit cycles out, okay? That's what you should focus on because, one, it loses you a buttload of money, and two, that's what affects people in the most negative possible way. Not just, oh, this mechanic was a little bit disappointing and it wasn't as powerful as I thought. Stack that up against, this is some bullshit, I cannot tolerate this, I'm gonna go play a different game, which is what I've heard from basically everybody lately. I'm surprised they have anybody left playing Standard. Like I said, the rumor floating around from multiple of my sources that want to remain anonymous are Standard is so far in the shitter, nobody's playing it, arena stats are down the toilet, everybody's moved to Draft and Brawl, and it's just... Standard is dead. And the other rumor is that Wizards is just like, it until rotation. There is no saving this, or even an attempt at making a ban to fix this until rotation, which ironically they just banned like 2 cards. So I hope you didn't plan to play Standard for the next 3 months, because you sure as hell aren't going to get to. And honestly, a lot of the problematic cards are going to survive rotation anyway. And then if they start the power down of Standard, because clearly the user polls would suggest that that's what they should do, not to mention the sales statistics, then we're just going to have 4 disappointing sets and then another rotation, then 4 more disappointing sets. Well, no, actually, I think after that point, we'd be good. I'm trying to think when it would... all I know is the game can't be functional till 2022. I did the math at some point. I remember that being true. So how's that for a good look into the future? So anyway, he does say, so much of what we've done would have seemed crazy, completely crazy to me. Really? Because I'm pretty sure you were behind them. And you wanted them to go further and they constantly check you, is what you literally said. So, which means that as Magic grows, it also adapts. So too must its designers. No, they don't need to adapt to your stupid vision. You need to get fired and they need to replace you. As I always say, I think Magic is going to outlive me, and I don't expect for it to ever stop adapting and growing. So today's column is just a tiny peek into the many places the game could go. So hopefully, I mean, for the last like 5, 6, 7, 8 years, Mark has been saying, yeah, I come up with all these crazy ideas and then the playtest people kind of rein me in and sometimes it rubs me the wrong way. Like he's said that like a ton of times. So hopefully this is just a list of the stupid, broken, overpowered, bad idea shit that he comes up with because he's like, oh, we've never done this before. This would be so different and powerful when nobody's looking for any of that. We just want the game to function and be fair at a basic level, not, oh, look at this amazing new thing. Oh, Mark is so creative and awesome. He came up with this new thing nobody's ever thought of before. Wow, which nobody ever says. It's usually just game-breaking garbage, which he very rarely apologizes for, but he did apologize for Companions, so... Anyway, yeah, I hope this is just his bullshit wish list and everybody just vetoes the crap out of him. It seems like lately it's been the Mark Rosewater show and he just does whatever he wants since they kind of restructured play design and card design and all that. They did that a couple years ago and the game went just down the toilet. I would assume because of it. I mean, it wouldn't be in spite of it, would it? So yeah, I think there's less people to tell him no, and now we've had, Companion and just like all these stupid ideas, these just idiotic ideas that don't even work. Everybody hates them. They make the game less functional. They make it shift digital. They're harder to track. Mutate was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And as far as I know, Mark's taking credit for every single one of them. So what we need is more people to tell him no, or, I mean, if you want to save money, just fire him and let everybody else do his job for him, because nobody could possibly do his job worse, except for Aaron Forsyth. He needs to go too. He's the big rubber stamp at the end of the day that says, yeah, this is fine. So him and Mark gotta go. Keep it popping with the hashtag fire Mark. I know he's getting sick of it from what I heard, and the backlash from some of his fanboys are actually really funny. You should keep posting fire Mark everywhere just to see the fanboy backlash, because it is very, very entertaining. Some of the arguments I've seen them make for like not firing Mark have been so funny. People have been just posting them nonstop on my Discord, where we're all having a bit of a laugh over there. So yeah, I mean, if the game keeps going the way it's going, and then they, somebody who isn't Mark and doesn't kiss his ass or isn't afraid of him at the company comes in and starts polling people on what they hate about the sets, and it turns out everything they hate was Mark's ideas, and if they even mention him by name constantly, and there starts to get some buzz that the community hates Mark and wants him out, somebody might actually do something about it. I mean, when you look at the declining sales numbers and the fact that they're doing double masters just to make up for all the losses from standard, not to mention Secret Lair, I mean, they can only stall and they can only kind of fudge the numbers and make the math look good for a while until somebody catches on and they're like, but how is our core product doing? Ooh. I mean, quite a while ago, like a year or two ago, I saw the Hasbro stock report, or not stock, but like investor report, the report that they give to investors to say, here's how great we're doing and blah, 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 whatever. And they had to take Magic and like board games, so like, I don't know, Monopoly and crap, and put them together into the same category to not make it look like Magic was losing mountains of money, because at the time it was. Gee, do you guys think that Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons and that whole everything, and then also board games, really actually go together? I guess they're both technically made out of paper. So from what I've heard from some sources, they're basically lying and fudging the reports to Hasbro, and they don't care as long as the bottom line is, oh, look, we made money, which is why they've done greedier and greedier shit as they break standard worse and worse and are driving away players in droves. And now, unfortunately, they have COVID-19 to hide behind. They could use that as any excuse for anything for any amount of time. Rightfully so, but at the same time, Standard's in the worst place it's ever been. So they're going to write it off as 100% of our losses were due to COVID-19. Trust us, take our word for it. While the players are like, can we get Standard to not be shit? Somebody's got to come in and audit and ask, well, then why is Arena losing money? Watch them try to spin it as, well, if you can't play paper, then why play Arena? So that people just gave up on F&M because their store's closed, and then they won't play Arena either, which is obviously bullshit. But yeah, like I said, the rumor is they've been just lying to Hasbro and just look at these pretty shiny numbers, and they're like, whatever, they're handing us giant money, cool, why micromanage it? Let them be autonomous. Which was kind of the theme of them acquiring Wizards in the first place. As long as the paychecks keep coming, they don't really care. But if they were to really take a close look at the business operations and the customer satisfaction and like some other factors that are about to go off a cliff, if they stop doing greedy shit to make up for all the money they're losing, oh, they would make some changes. Big Daddy Hasbro would step in and be like, what the hell? And just start handing out pink slips. I mean, they would step in and be like, did we just hear that you don't hire any black people, even as contracted artists, and then at the same time, your head of the judge program said that they don't want more white males and they're not welcome in the judge program? Pardon me, what? Who's running this company? Into the ground or straight into a fucking iceberg? I dream of the day that happens. If I had any contacts in Hasbro management, I would call them up personally and tell them what's going on and what they need to scrutinize. They need to hear the truth. Then again, another rumor is that Chris Cox, or whatever his name is, he came in as the whole manager of all of Wizards of the Coast, and I think he was sent from Hasbro, or Hasbro placed him there because he has a very commercial, corporate Hasbro kind of attitude, and he was behind all of the selfish, greedy, cut out the store, degenerate crap like Secret Lair. So I mean, the other rumor, the absolute contradictory rumor, and they can't both be true, is that they brought in someone saying, hey, make more money, maximize this, you're not doing well enough, and then a bunch of their pushed power level stuff was a direct result of Hasbro saying make more money. And then giving them really poor advice on how to do it because nobody in management there knows how the hell to run a card game. You know what I mean? So the whole, why aren't we selling high-powered standard cards to Commander players or Modern players? Like, why we just discontinued Modern Masters? How are we making money off Modern people? Up the power level, that could have came from way up in the chain. So one of the two is true. Either it's directly basically Hasbro's fault, or they're completely ignorant of it and the Wizards management is brushing everything under the rug and not letting them know what's really going on. And just making the numbers look pretty. I think it's kind of a mix of both. Like, obviously they seem contradictory, but I think a little bit of both is going on. And if either one is primarily true, it's not a good sign for the game because it's going to keep getting sent into a negative direction. The worst part is absolutely 100% verified by like over 100 people on Glassdoor.com that used to work for Wizards and left a review. They have indicated that there is no accountability for mistakes at Wizards. If you've been working there for over 10 years, you can make all the mistakes you want. Nobody's allowed to call you out on it. If you do, you're fired. And giant mistakes by Mark or Aaron or anybody else, the CEO, management, anybody. They're never addressed. They're not brought up in meetings about how can we avoid doing this before. It's basically you shut up about it or you lose your job. And like I said, that's not a rumor. That's like dozens, if not hundreds of people on Glassdoor saying that that's how the company runs. So I'm inclined to believe them when it's at that volume. So they never look back and say, who caused this? Whose idea was this? Why did it fail? And let's not do it in the future. You know, like a normal company would do. They're such egotistical, stuck-up assholes. They never want to be reminded of the constant mistakes they make. They think they can do absolutely nothing wrong and they're the perfect person for the job and that they know everything and nobody's smarter than them, which, you know, welcome to Seattle. That's the attitude over there. And then because of that, nothing ever gets fixed. Nothing gets changed. The same mistakes get made over and over and over. The same anti-consumer crap keeps happening. They keep losing players, you know, from the player base, entire portions for the same reasons over and over and over, and it never gets addressed or fixed. So that's why that's my outlook of the future. I figured I'd throw my knowledge of it because, you know, Mark's going to give you his stupid crooked version that sounds terrible. I wanted to throw in my 2 cents about what I know and what I've heard. Not to just remind you, oh, wow, the game's going off a cliff. Wow, this sucks, you know. It's just you should be concerned about it, maybe even try to do something about it. Remember, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You complain about it enough on social media, it's going to grab some attention from somebody who might be able to do something about it. At a certain density level, when they keep hearing the same message over and over and over, they have to address it or do something about it because the customer is, I'd say, always right. But the real thing is, whether the customer is right or not, you have to do what they say or they're going to stop buying your shit. That's the real version of that saying. So yeah, that's the peachy outlook for the future to ruin your Monday. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you guys next video.